Hi, hello. So this is going to be the continuation of Pop Culture Unit 2, Lesson 2.2. Okay? Kasi yung nakaraan is 2.1. Okay? So now we are going to resume our discussion on psychological approach. Okay? So we are now going to begin psychological approach. Okay? So to define psychological approach, this is an attempt to explore the effects of the mind, behavior, and motivations on literature and on culture. Okay, so we are going to analyze again how the mind works. So, what could be the behavior and what are the motivations, what are the drives of certain characters, or how is it represented in on literature and in culture? Okay, so it intends to see the perspectives of individuals involved in a text or practice and their effects on these. Okay. So again, you have the perspectives of individuals. So what are the decisions? What are the actions? What are the behaviors? What are the psychology of individuals represented in the text, and how do they affect the work itself. Okay, so those are the goals of psychological approach. Okay, so pag sinabi nating psychological approach, again, you're just parang you are analyzing the mind. How does the mind of the work? Okay, so parang paano siya gumagana? Okay, yung pag-iisip niya. So it's like psychology. Okay, you're trying to explore the psychology of the work itself. Okay, now, we are going to focus on psychoanalytic theory or psychoanalysis or psychosexual theory or Freudian theory, Freudian psychology. You can use a lot of terms regarding this. Okay, so we are going to use this. There are lots of theories related to psychological approach, as I have mentioned in the first video, but we are just going to focus on psychoanalytic theory or psychoanalysis because this is one of the classic theories that is used in analyzing texts, literature, and popular culture. Okay, so it discusses about speculating about the motivations, drives, fears, and desires in the representation of culture. So when you analyze using psychoanalytic theory, you are going to analyze the text or the work through looking at what could be the motivation behind this action, or what could be the fears of the character, what could be the drives, what could be the desires. Okay, so behind the actions of the characters. Okay, say, for example, a character committed a crime. Now, what motivated him or her to commit that crime? Okay? Or kung anong nangyari ay pinagtakpan naman niya yung kasalanan ng isa. Ano yung motivation niya? Ano yung desire niya? Kapalit nung ginawa niya. Okay? So, yung mga ganon. Okay? So, what could be also the fear, the subconscious. Okay? So, yon example din yun ng mga topics or mga areas that we are trying to look into when we use psychoanalytic theory. Psychoanalytic theory analyzes works to reveal insights about the way the human mind works. So again, you are trying to explore how the human mind works when you are using psychoanalysis as a theory. Third, works well as a method of analyzing drives and motivations behind actions and representation. So katulad nga ng sabi ko kanina, yun nga, you are trying to make sense of the action. So why did this happen? So why did this occur? So, bakit ganito yung behavior niya? What could be the drive or the motivation behind this action? Okay, so yun yung mga ina-analyze natin using psychoanalytic theory. Fourth, look closely at the portrayal of psychological motivations present in their story and or backstory presented in the popular culture. Because sometimes, especially in films or in TV series, right? 'Di ba? May mga backstory. Say for example, a villain. So merong villain. All we can see in the villain is bad. Okay? Unless we see the backstory. And the backstory somehow parang in some point, parang justifies kung bakit naging ganon yung character. Bakit naging ganon siya mag-isip. Bakit naging ganon siya umasta. Bakit ganon yung behavior niya. Bakit masama siya. Bakit niya ginagawa itong mga krimen na to. It's because it's affected by his or her backstory. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, those motivations came from the upbringing na meron siya nung bata siya or basta nung mga nakaraang taon. So, mga ganon. Okay? So next, beliefs in the notion that the human psyche is composed of three principles. So we have the id, ego, and superego. So according to Sigmund Freud, who was the proponent of psychoanalytic theory, according to him, that the human mind or the human psyche has three principles. Yun nga, yung id natin, yung ego natin, and then we have the superego. Okay? So we have the id, which is the pleasure principle. Not necessarily that id is always bad. Okay? But this is most likely to commit bad things, yung id, because this is again the pleasure principle. The id contains pleasure, pain, and then it seeks to provide the human, okay? It seeks to provide the person, okay, the comforts of life, okay? And then as well as the instinct, okay? Yung id natin yung nagsasabi sa atin na pag na-sense niya na masama tong bagay na to, makakasama sa'yo, you would avoid, okay? Yun yung nagdidikta na parang red alert, parang wag mong pakialaman yan, bad yan, okay? Kasi yun yung id natin, kasi alam niya na makakasama sa'yo. Pero, the id also dictates na i-push mo tong bagay na to kasi ito ay magbibigay na pleasure sa'yo. Okay? So again, it's the pleasure principle. Okay? So katulad ng mga sanggol na mga baby, yung mga baby is wala pa silang sense ng ego and superego. All they have is id. Okay? So to define or to describe id better, you just have to think of a baby. Ang baby, kapag gutom, iiyak. Okay? Kasi anong gusto ng baby? Laging pleasure. Okay? Lagi makakabuti sa kanya. Pag gutom siya, gusto niya kumain. Okay? Iiyak siya. Pag mapupupo siya, pupupo lang siya. Okay? Sa pantalon niya. Ay, sa ano niya, sa diaper niya. Okay? Or sa lampen. So, ganun yon kapag sinabi nating id. It's more of the pleasure. Pag sinabi naman nating ego, this is parang the conscious principle. Meaning, this is the decision-making body. So, this is the parang yung sa gitna ni ego, ni superego and the id. Okay? So, si ego, siya yung, alam niya yung perils. Alam niya yung dinidikta ni id. Alam niya yung pleasure. Alam niya yung perils. Alam din niya yung tinidikta ni superego. Magpapaubaya and all. Okay? So, it's up to the ego kung anong decision yung gagawin niya. Okay? And then we have the superego which dictates parang everything that is pro-society naman, pro-other people naman. Okay? So, the superego always talks about morality. What is moral? Ano yung tamang gawin? So, kahit na isang tabi mo yung sarili mo, kahit na iset aside mo yung sarili mo, basta makakabuti para sa iba, yun yung ididikta ni superego. Okay? Say, for example, pagnanakaw. Okay? So, wala kang pera, wala kang kapera-pera, tapos yung pamilya mo nagugutom na, wala kang trabaho. Okay? So, the id would dictate you to steal kasi that is the only way for you to what? For you to eat and then for your family to eat. So, syempre, si id, pleasure principle, ang gusto lang naman niya is mabigyan kayo ng maayos na buhay or mabigyan kayo ng kakainin sa araw na to. Okay? Para to give pleasure for you. As of this moment. Okay? So, si id, sasabihin niya sa'yo na, okay lang yan, magnakaw ka, at least makakakain kayo ngayon. Okay? So, yun yung si id. Si superego naman, sasabihin niya, di baling magutom ka, di baling magutom ang pamilya mo, basta hindi ka magnanakaw, kasi bad yon. That's immoral. Okay? So, superego, again, sinasantabi yung sarili para sa kapakanan ng society or para sa iba. Okay? Si id naman, wala siyang pakialam sa society, basta unahin niya yung sarili niya. Okay, now, it's up to the ego kung ano yung gagawin niyang action. Okay, so siya yung decision-making body. So yun yung sasabi ni Sigmund Freud. There are three principles in the human psyche. If you want to read more about id, ego, and superego, kindly check the links that I have provided in your module, or you could also search on your own on YouTube or on Google as long as those are legit websites. Okay, so I am also encouraging you to research on your own. Okay, and lastly, is employed to find traces of unresolved emotions, guilt, psychological conflicts, and ambivalence of the representation of popular culture. Okay, so again, you are looking into unresolved emotions because unresolved emotions could what? It could It could be a motivation or a drive for you to commit something. Halimbawa, yun nga, yung mga rapists, di ba? Halimbawa, yung mga rapists minsan, kaya nila nagagawa daw yun is because gustong-gusto nila makuha yung babae na yun. Kaso nga lang, hindi nila ma-express yung feeling nila doon. Parang alam nila sa sarili nila na hindi nila makukuha yung babae na yun. Kaya kukunin nila by force. Okay? So, you call that as unresolved emotions. Okay? So, you also have guilt, psychological conflicts, meaning meron silang mental illness or meron silang parang they are mentally challenged. That's why they do a certain thing. Okay? So, yun. You are going to find representations of that in popular culture. Okay? So, as you analyze using psychoanalytic theory. Okay, so examples nun, ayun nga, most of the time, mga psychological thrillers yung pwede nating i-analyze if we want parang psychoanalytic theory to work. Actually, you can use psychoanalytic theory in all kinds of popular culture naman, as long as you can make sense of it. But the closest thing that you can analyze using psychoanalytic theory would be, of course, psychological thrillers. Okay? So, halimbawa, Gone Girl, so psychological thriller din ito, kung saan makikita natin there is a certain conflict here. So, what could be the motivation? What drove the people in this film to act like that? Okay? Or to commit crimes, di ba? So, another example is yung The Dark Knight by Christopher Nolan. So, legendary tong film na to. So, we can analyze bakit si Batman ay naging Batman. So, bakit sa nanggaling yung pangalang Batman? Ano yung motivation nun? Bakit siya lumalaban sa krimen? Pero hindi naman siya full-fledged na superhero. Isa siyang anti-hero. So, bakit siya naging ganon? Okay, si Joker naman, bakit ginagawa ni Joker yung mga krimen? Bakit siya pumapatay? Okay, so yung mga ganon, what are the motivations? What are the drives as to why they do those kinds of things? Okay, so you are going to make sense of their psychology using psychoanalytic theory. Okay, so ayun, Inception. Yung Inception din, isang example din to ng psychological thriller, action, fantasy, sci-fi, ganyan. Okay, so Inception, Christopher Nolan. Actually, if you want to use psychoanalytic theory, I would recommend parang mga Christopher Nolan films. Very psychological yung mga films niya. Okay, so ayun nga, Inception, Christopher Nolan din, katulad ng gumawa ng The Dark Knight. Ayun, so you can use this. It's exploring actually about subconscious and dreams, which is also discussed in psychoanalysis, and it's also a part of Freudian psychology. We also have Orphan, kung napanood nyo to, very iconic din tong film na to. So, ayun nga, si Esther, bakit siya naging ganon? Ano yung kanyang motivation? So, you also have the backstory there. So, yun nga, what are the fears, motivation, drives, what are the parang psychological conflicts na meron, unresolved emotions na meron. So, again, you can use that to analyze films, okay, or other forms of popular culture, okay. So, ayan, sa Bleach naman, and most animes, actually, may mga ganito silang tropes, yung ganyan, yung mga lolicon, mga shotakon, mga may daughter complex, ganyan. So, yun ay part din ng Freudian psychology, yung mga complexes, kung tawagin natin. So, we have like, Oedipus complex, Electra complex, daughter complex, son complex, yan, may mga ganun. Yocasta complex. So, we have, lots of complexes. Katulad nga nito, yung mga father na overly attached sa daughters nila. Okay, so this is also a part of the complexes in Freudian psychology. So, you could also discuss this if you analyze using psychoanalytic theory. So, and actually, Aladdin, you could also use, you could also use psychoanalytic theory in Aladdin. Siyempre, yung, motivation niya, decision-making niya, id-ego, super-ego. Halimbawa, yung ginawa niya na nagsinungaling siya in order to pretend to get the girl he likes, di ba? Parang medyo falling into id because not thinking of the moral implications of that action. Ang gusto niya lang makuha ay pleasure, gusto niya mapaluguran yung sarili niya, gusto niya makuha yung babaeng mahal niya, kaya wala siyang pakialam sa moral implications, inuna niya yung sarili niyang gusto. That is very parang leaning into id, di ba? Okay, so id, ego, super ego, we can also use that when we analyze using psychoanalytic theory. So katulad nga ng naging example natin sa Aladdin. Okay, so these are the guide questions that we can use while you are analyzing popular culture. Okay, so what are the hidden desires, motivations, fear, urges, and instinct of the characters or persona in the representation of or in popular culture in general. So again, what are the desires? It could be explicit or implicit. So it could be hidden or yun nga, parang explicitly shown. Okay, so what are the desires, motives, fears, urges, and instincts in the representation? So, is or are there any mannerism or mannerisms that were shown? So, can we trace the reason for that or those? So, mannerisms are also a part of parang Freudian psychology because yung mannerisms kasi nagtatrace siya doon sa manifestation siya ng psychological implication either nangyari before or yun nga, just recently. Okay? So, how does the subconscious affect the portrayal in popular culture? Okay? So, doon sa palabas or doon sa example ng popular culture na yon, paano naka-affect yung subconscious doon? Okay? Yung subconscious, paano, gano'ng kalaki yung kanyang effect? Okay, how do the three principles of human psyche, id, ego, and superego affect the representation of popular culture? So, halimbawa, katulad nga kanina, you are going to analyze Aladdin using id, ego, and superego. So, how are you going to make sense of that film? Okay, if we are going to use id, ego, and superego to analyze it. And lastly, does popular culture or its representation show complexes? Oedipus complex. Okay, so we have Oedipus complex, we have Electra complex. Oedipus complex is when you tawag nito, when you are attached with your mom. Okay, so parang mama's boy, Electra complex is daddy's girl. Parang attached naman si baby girl sa kanyang daddy. Yocasta complex naman is the mother is attached to her son. So yung parang sa mga K-drama, yung mga strict mother-in-law na ayaw ipaasawa yung anak nilang lalaki. So yung anak nilang lalaki may girlfriend na tapos laging hindi sila boto, ganun. So you have the Yocasta complex. So yon. Okay, Laius complex if the father is ayaw niya dun sa anak niyang lalaki. Yun. So you have different complexes. So, how do the operations of repression structure or inform the work? Okay? What might a given interpretation of a popular culture work suggest about the psychological motives of the audience? Okay? So, yung interpretation, parang halimbawa, ang gagawin ninyo is you are going to get different interpretations. Diba, nanood kayo ng pelikula. Nas kukuha kayo ng mga reviews or mga interpretation from different people. Now, what can you get from those interpretations about the audience? Okay, so mula dun sa mga interpretations na yun, ng audiences, what could we get or how could we make sense of the psychological motives of the audiences ng mga manonood, okay? From their interpretation, from their own interpretation. How can characters' behavior, narrative events, or images be explained in terms of psychoanalytic concepts of any kind? So, for example, fear or fascination with death, sexuality, which includes love and romance, as well as sexual behavior as a primary indicator of psychological identity or the operations of ego, id, and superego, or id, ego, and superego. Okay? So, paano natin ma-analyze yung psychology ng characters or ng mismong kwento using psychoanalytic theory. Okay? So, halimbawa, yun nga, does it include parang themes of fear of death or fascination with death? Halimbawa, medyo suicidal yung character. So, we can see there is a fascination with death. Saan nanggagaling yun? Bakit siya fascinated with death? Or halimbawa, sexuality. So, saan nanggagaling yung ganong behavior. Halimbawa, gusto niya lagi meron siyang karelasyon, parang mamatay siya pag wala siyang jowa, ganon. So, parang saan ba nanggagaling yung ganong thinking? So, ayun nga. And then the operations of id, ego, and superego. So, that is psychoanalytic theory. Now, what about gender-related approach? Okay, so this is an approach that is used to look into the status of men, women, and queer people in the society, indexed and other representations. It aims to understand the issues of sexuality, power, and oppression among gender. So again, you are going to look into sexuality, gender identity. Okay, so yung mga yon, basta anything related to gender, and then you are going to look into what could, kung meron bang oppression that exists between the different genders. Meron bang dominant gender? Meron bang dominated gender? May gender ba na oppressed? Meron bang gender na powerful? Meron bang gender na powerless? So, yung mga ganun, okay? So, gender-related approach. It focuses on gender's involvement in the development of economic, political, and social structure. So, ibig sabihin, you could also look into the status of gender. Parang can all genders be included in parang in politics, ganun, or may mga gender na parang nadi-discriminate. So, lahat ba ng genders ay may karapatan na parang magkaroon ng maayos na economy, or I mean yung kanilang social class, may mga gender ba na na-oppress sa society, yun. So, kasama din yun sa gender-related approach. So, everything that is gender-related. Okay, kaya siya gender-related approach. So, for this one, we are going to tackle two theories under gender-related approach, which is feminism and queer. Okay, so let's start with feminism. So this one is one of the classics. So it aims to describe the treatment of society and other cultural representations toward women. Okay, so again, you are looking into the role of women in the society. How are women treated in the society? You are going to describe that using feminism. Okay, so it shows the oppression. So what kind of oppression? Kasi pag sinabi natin oppression, mostly like physical eh. Okay, but we have all kinds of oppression. So we have economic, political, social, psychological, aside from physical. Kasi physical yung mismo binubugbog yung mga babae. Pero there is also like economic oppression. Pag sabing economic oppression, yung babae hindi pwedeng magtrabaho. Yung babae, hindi pwedeng magkaroon ng sarili niyang pera. Kailangan lagi silang joint nung lalaki. Diba? Mag-asawa sila, laging joint yung ipon nila. Hindi pwedeng magkaroon ng sariling pera yung babae. So, you have that economic oppression. What else? Political oppression. So, kapag babae yung candidate, parang less votes kasi parang less credible siya kapag ganon. What else? Social. So, we have feminism. Ay, kasi babae. Ay, ganyan talaga pag babae. May ganon. May ganong notion. So, that is a social notion towards women. Oppression. Social oppression. And we also have, of course, psychological oppression, which is psychological abuse toward women. Okay? That may be, again, explicitly or implicitly experienced. Kasi explicit, as in diretsahan, harap-harapang ginagawa sa kanya, or implicit, which is parang subtle or pinaparinig lang sa kanya or pinaparamdam lang sa kanya pero hindi explicitly sinasabi sa kanya. Okay? So, feminism supports the notion that women are as capable as men. Okay? So, women are as capable as men, therefore aiming to promote an equal and fair treatment on both sexes. So, feminism aims that hindi naman, ibig sabihin babae is weaker sex na agad. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, they're just equal. Parang things that men can do, women can also do. Okay? So, Yan. Protests that the role of women in families and in the society is not boxed in the four corners of the house. Rather, they have individual lives and career that they may choose for themselves. So, feminism kindly breaks the notion that females are meant to be mothers only. Okay, so parang the ultimate goal of being a woman is to bear a child, okay, and to become a mother and to care for a husband and to take care of the house and all. Okay, so actually, feminism tries to protest that women are also people, that they can choose whatever they want for their lives. They can decide for their lives, okay? Kung ano man yung gusto nilang gawin, okay? So they can have a career that they may choose for themselves, okay? And lastly, feminism rejects the role of women imposed by the patriarchal societies and refuses the notion that women's worth is determined by her gender. Okay, so again, you are trying to reject the role imposed to you by the patriarchal society, dictating that this is something that you should do because you are a woman, ganyan. Okay, so you are refusing the notion that you are determined by your gender. Okay, so women can be whatever they want. Okay, so yun, yung sinasabi na feminism. Okay, so another, we have four waves of feminism. So not all feminism are, or not all kinds of feminism are the same. So actually magkakaiba sila. So we have first wave, second wave, third wave, and fourth wave. We have four waves of feminism, which are distinct from one another. Okay? So the first wave of feminism talks about women oppression. So this displays woman as root of evil, weak, lesser sex, or being dominated or abused by men and other figures in the society. So the first wave of feminism, which is women oppression, it tries to show how woman is being oppressed by the society. Okay, so it's either woman always takes the blame, okay, takes the blame of all crimes, or parang lahat ng kamalasan, or lahat ng mga tawag nito, lahat ng mga pangit na pangyayari, babae ang may kasalanan nun. Okay, so you have that as first wave. Okay, so it's either you are the root of, as a woman, you are the root of evil, you are weak, you are the lesser sex, or you are the dominated or abused. Okay, so yun yung tatawag natin ng women oppression. So example niyan, halimbawa is we have origin stories like Pandora's Box, and yung Garden of Eden, yung si Eve. Yun. So makikita natin na parang yung women, sila yung dahilan ng, sila yung root of evil. Okay? Kasi 'di ba si Pandora, siya yung nagpakawala ng mga bad things in the earth. And then we have Eve, siya yung siya yung nauto ni Satan, nung serpent, tapos siya yung nang-uto naman kay Adam, yung ano niya, yung asawa niya. So para makikita natin doon, root of evil yung babae. So we can, that falls into women oppression. So first wave. And other works na magiging example natin for women oppression. Basta again, feminism for first wave or women oppression, it aims to, again, parang reveal the injustices experienced by women in the society. Okay? So yun yun. Laging kawawa yung babae. Pinapakita niya kung gaano kawawain yung babae in the society or in the representation. So that is women oppression or the first wave. What about the second wave? Okay, so second wave is gender equality. So this wave of feminism shows how women are in par or in equal footing with men and other sexes in the society. So actually, kung yung first wave, it shows that women is the lesser sex, or women are always parang abused, ganyan, laging kawawa yung women. So they are trying to reveal that women are abused in the society. Well, the second wave or the gender equality, it aims to show and to prove to everybody that women are actually in par or in equal footing with men. So, yun nga, equality. Ina-aim naman niya yung equality. So, hindi siya mahina. Hindi rin siya higit. Equal lang sila ng mga lalaki or ng iba pang sexes. Okay? So, that is the second wave. Now, what about the third wave? The third wave is women empowerment. Okay? So, it displays women as valued, respected, praised and cunning people. So women are also viewed as upper hand in some situations. So in the third wave naman, so we are through with being equal. So the third wave tries to display women as empowered people. Okay? So women naman, sila ay valued, sila ay respected, sila ay praised, sila ay matatalino, magagaling. Okay? So ibig sabihin, they possess a lot of great qualities that only they can possess sometimes. Okay? So ayun nga, pag sinabi natin women empowerment, of course, yun nga, women are empowered. Okay? So ibig sabihin, at some point, they are in equal footing with men, pero they are respected in the society. Halimbawa nito ay Amaya. Okay? So, sa Amaya, makikita natin, yung mga babaylan ay, although merong dato at yung mga maginoo, o yung mga maharlika, ng mga lalaki, matataas din naman yung posisyon nun. Pero, halos kapantay nila mga babaylan, pero yung mga babaylan, may certain sila na mga privileges na sila lang yung nakakagawa. That's why they are respected in the society. Pag sinabi ng babaylan na bawal tong gawin, even yung dato, hindi niya yun gagawin. Okay? Bakit? Kasi again, they are valued, they are respected, they are praised. Okay, so yun nga example natin ng women empowerment. And the fourth wave is radical feminism. So they view women as dominating and domineering sex. So meaning, yung mga babae, hindi lang sila empowered, hindi lang sila kapantay ng males, mas magagaling talaga sila sa males. So, lagi ang pinaniniwalaan nila, babae ang magagaling, mga lalaki, mga bubits, ganun. So, parang ganun yung sinasabi ng radical feminism. So, they are parang medyo egotistic na na view on feminism. They only view that women are always right. Okay, and then they are proud of that. So they are domineering. Okay, so you have radical feminism. Okay, let's have examples. Okay, so for this one, ito ay isang example ng mga works ng feminism. So, all about women, itong mga to. So, you can watch these. So, you have The Color Purple by Alice Walker. This is actually a novel, one of the classic novels, showing women oppression, as in yung oppression ng women na experience nila dito. Sobrang sakit sa puso ng oppression. So, ayun, may movie din to. Ito, Little Women, bagong labas din. So, maganda siya, yung Little Women, showing naman, of course, feminism, individuality of each and every one of the four sisters. Okay, so yun nga, revolving about women and then there's individuality as women. Okay, so we have ito, examples. So, I'm going to use Disney. Okay, I'm going to use Disney films to reinforce the four waves of feminism. So, let's have women oppression or the first wave. So, my example is Snow White and then Sleeping Beauty. So, si Aurora. So, makikita natin dito, yung feminism is they are very oppressed. So, ma'am, bakit siya oppressed? Eh, di ba, mga princesses sila, tsaka magaganda sila, magaganda naman yung buhay nila. So, bakit sila oppressed? So, again, yung oppression nga, minsan implicit, hindi naman explicit, okay? So, makikita natin yung depiction or yung representation sa kanila as women, they are very weak. They need a prince to save them. And then, they are very gullible. Uto-uto sila. So, parang alam mo yun, yung representation ng mga babae dito sa film na to is very weak. Okay? Halimbawa, si Snow White, di ba? Kailangan pa niya mag-save ng prince, kailangan niya mag-rely sa mga dwarves para makahanap siya ng safe haven. Very gullible siya, alam niya, stranger, pero pa rin niya. So, parang pagkakadipik sa kanya, parang sobrang tanga niya, ganun. So, ibig sabihin, parang lesser sex siya kasi nga, yung kanyang mentality is not that strong, okay? So, you can see here that it's kind of oppression kasi the depiction of woman here is very weak, okay? So, ayan. And then, we have also Sleeping Beauty or Aurora. So, ayun nga, si Aurora is very protected all throughout her life. And then, nung nagkaroon na siya ng curse, kailangan niya ng isang lalaki to save her. Okay? So, again, it's like a form of oppression because it's showing how weak a woman is. Okay? So, ayun nga. And then, we can see also, the antagonist is also a woman. So, we have Maleficent. a woman also. Pero makikita natin doon na si Maleficent is depicted as the root of evil naman. So, oppression pa din. Kasi parang yung lahat ng kamalasang nangyayari, puro babae may kasalanan. Lahat ng nabibiktima, babae din. So, ibig sabihin parang may oppression sa kanya. Compared to this batch or the contemporary batches of, hindi kita sa Tiana. Okay, so parang sa contemporary batches ng Disney films, lalo na ngayon, very empowered yung mga babae. Okay? So, ito naman yung mga ito yung sa equality. We have si Mulan. Okay? Kasi 'di ba kung ano yung nagagawa ng mga male na sundalo, nagawa niya rin. So, ayan, makikita natin. Si Merida, kung ano yung nagagawa ng mga lalaki, nagagawa niya rin. So, archery, mas magaling pa siya sometimes. Si Tiana, ganun din. She doesn't even need a man to fulfill her dreams kasi nga pinagsisikapan niya yon. So, we have Moana of Motunui, di ba? Very independent as well as, of course, Elsa. So, they are very powerful in their own right. Okay? So, yun nga, women empowerment and gender equality. Okay? So, ito is example natin ulit ng women oppression. So, we have Sisa. Yun nga, makita natin si Sisa. She endured the cruelty of her husband. Again, abuse. So, merong physical abuse na involved. Pero, alam mo yon parang very weak kasi hindi man lang siya pumapalag. Hinahayaan lang niya yung kanyang asawa na gawin yon sa kanya. So, yun nga, isang example natin siya ng women oppression. So, yun nga. Then we have also Maria Clara. So, si Maria Clara, of course, there's also oppression there kasi nga she cannot even decide for her own decisions. Laging tatay niya nagde-decide para sa kanya or pamilya nagde-decide para sa kanya. What else? Ayun nga, she was also an object of desire for male characters in the series, especially yung Praile. So, makikita natin na, kumbaga siya ay sunod-sunuran lang sa gusto ng mga lalaki na nakapaligid sa kanya. So, yun nga, si Maria Clara. So, we also have gender equality. So, example nga natin si Mulan. Not necessarily Mulan is greater than the males sa time niya, pero she can do yung kung ano yung ginagawa nila. So, that is actually one of the greatest themes ng Mulan na animation, yung Mulan, kasi pinapakita niya na kung ano yung kaya na regardless of your gender, you can do things, okay? Kasi 'di ba, hindi naman alam ng mga kasama niya na babae pala siya. And still, she kept up with the training, yung pati yung lifestyle. So, kumbaga, nakasabay siya doon sa mga counterparts niya. So, ibig sabihin, there is some sort of a gender equality there. Promoting feminism and feminine power at the same time. Okay? So, yun nga, yung maganda doon. What else? Sa Lion King naman. So, you also have gender equality. The lionesses, they are very brave, yung mga lionesses. Although they are not the leaders, pero they hunt, they do rescue, okay? So, they fight. So, they are as capable as men. Okay? So, you have here gender equality for these two examples of films. So, next is we have women empowerment. Ito ay si Katniss Everdeen, itong part na to, sorry. So, ayan, women empowerment. So, you can see here the cunning, and then the bravery, the intelligence, and then the women are well respected. They are valued here in these two examples. Okay? So, syempre, alam natin, si Katniss Everdeen, syempre, she is what? She was the icon of the rebellion. So, naturally, she is respected. She is valued, of course. And she also showed what? Cunning and intelligence all throughout the trilogy of Hunger Games. So, makikita natin doon na she is very empowered in those 4 films to be exact. Okay, so, and then we have Empress Ki. I don't know if everybody watched it. Pero yun nga, sikat din to na K-drama. So you have here Empress Ki. So she rose to power from being a small child in the lower suburbs. Naging empress siya ng China. So makikita natin na she is very empowered and she's very intelligent. Okay? At yung dalawang ruler ng dalawang bansa, both China and Korea, na kuha niya yung dalawa na yun. Okay? So nagkagusto sa kanya yun. So she's very empowered. Okay? So, although they are parang in equal footing with other men, pero na-highlight lalo yung empowerment nila because they possess a certain power that only they can wield, rather. Okay, so halimbawa si Katniss, although kasing galing niya naman yung ibang mga tributes na lalaki, pero siya yung napili bilang maging icon kasi nga siya yung pinaka nirerespeto, siya yung parang pinaka tinitingala ng mga tao. Si Empress Ki ganun din. Okay? Although kapantay niya naman yung mga ibang mga officials, pero siya lang yung may power na maimpluwensyahan yung two kings ng dalawang kingdom. Okay? So ayun nga, they are very empowered. And then we have, ayan, women empowerment also. We have Encantadia. Oh my God, si Alena hindi makita. Okay, so we have Encantadia. Bakit sila example ng women empowerment? Of course, because they stand on a pedestal above other characters. Although there are other characters which are males and in other genders na powerful din naman, pero sila ay very empowered because they are leaders. They are queens. And then they are, sangre. Ibig sabihin, they are very sacred. They are special. Okay? So they are empowered before everyone else. Pero they also still have their weaknesses. Okay? Now, this is an example of radical feminism. So this is Brie Larson from Captain Marvel. I don't really watch Marvel movies, pero yun nga, I was told that this is an example of radical feminism. Bakit magkaiba si Mulan na 2020 versus si Mulan na animation? It's because Mulan na animation only shows gender equality, that it protests that what men can do, women can do. But here in Mulan 2020, it insisted that Mulan is greater than everybody else. That Mulan doesn't even need training, okay? Because Mulan has chi and all. Parang ganon. Okay, so that's why I'm very disappointed with Mulan 2020 because it didn't really reinforce feminism. It's very radical. It's a very toxic form of feminism. Because in order to highlight the value of Mulan or the feminine power of Mulan, they have to make everyone else suck. Okay? They need to ruin the character of every male character just so Mulan can show her power and whatsoever. So they made every male character useless just to highlight that Mulan is powerful, and that's very awful. So that's a very awful film for me, Mulan. So showing radical feminism because parang Mulan is greater than everybody else. Ang galing-galing niya. Parang wala na makakatalo kay Mulan forever. Lagi siyang magaling, ganun. So you have radical feminism as well as tawag nito, Captain Marvel also. Kasi si Captain Marvel, 'di ba, super powerful niya. Sobrang lakas na niya. So wala na siyang parang growth. Kasi malakas na siya eh. Siya yung pinakamalakas sa buong universe eh. So, wala nang growth yung character niya. So, showing radical feminism kasi nga, she is the strongest of all. So, meaning, yun nga, dominating siya. Okay? So, you have there, radical feminism. So, these are the questions that you could ask yourself while watching films if you want to use this as a theory to analyze popular culture. Okay, what is the role or function of women in the text or representation? So, what is the function again of women? So, ano ba siya? Isa ba siyang... Okay. Hindi ko makita. Okay, so isa ba siyang hero, villain, breadwinner, servant, sex object? So, because depending on the function or the role of woman in the text, doon natin makikita kung anong klaseng film ito, what kind of wave yung pinapakita niya. So, oppressed ba yung women? Equal ba yung mga genders? Empowered ba yung women or radical? Okay, so depending on the role or the function in the representation. Okay, so how does woman view herself? Herself in the family, herself in the community, and herself in the society. Okay, so iba kasi yung tingin sa kanya ng society, iba rin yung tingin niya sa sarili niya. Okay, so paano yung tingin niya sa sarili niya? Okay, so according to her, what is her value? Okay? So, how are women being portrayed in the text or representation? So, are they on par with men? Are they oppressed? Or are they honored or worshipped? Okay? So, next, are women limited in their actions, decisions, or speech? So, if yes, ibig sabihin, oppressed sila. Okay, so as easy as that. So, ayan, what does the work imply about the possibilities of sisterhood as a mode of resisting patriarchy? Okay, so ayun nga. Sometimes kasi women, they bond together in order to resist patriarchy. Okay, so meron bang ganon? Kasi yun ay isang example ng feminism, kung meron pinapakita na ganon. Okay? So, what does the history of the work's reception by the public and by the critics tell us about the operation of patriarchy? Okay, so halimbawa, ano yung naging pagtanggap ng mga manonood doon sa palabas na yon? So, sumang-ayon ba sila or ni-reject nila? Kasi base doon sa reception ng public, makikita natin, at ng critics, makikita natin kung ano yung tingin ng audiences or ng society talaga sa mga babae. Okay, halimbawa, um, napanood nila yung Moana. Okay, so napanood nila yung Moana. Tapos yung mga audiences, tsaka yung mga critics, biglang nagsabi sila na, ay, hindi naman pwede yung ganyan. Babae yung nagiging hero, but wala siyang ka-love team. Pag may ganong klase ng reception, it could be the view of the public is still patriarchal. Okay? Kasi they still believe that women must have a love interest. And women cannot choose like a career for herself. Okay? So, what does the work say about women's creativity? Okay, we could also ask that. And what does the work reveal about the operations, economically, politically, socially, or psychologically of patriarchy? Okay, so paano gumagana yung patriarchy according to the work? Okay, so next is we have the queer theory. So, it identifies themes, characters, and motivations outside the heteronormativity. Okay, so we have, syempre, we have heteronormativity, meaning we only have like two brackets, male and female. Paano kapag hindi ka nagpo-fall in dun sa dalawang yon? Paano kung hindi ka na, you don't identify yourself as male, you don't identify yourself as female, or paano kapag a boy at saka girl, ang brackets or ang columns, hindi mo naman tinitreat yung sarili mo as boy, hindi ka naman din girl. So, asan ka lulugar? Okay, so, yun yung goal ng queer theory, to provide a place for those outside of the heteronormativity. So, it identifies, again, themes, characters, actions, and motivations that are aside or outside from heteronormativity or non-binaryism. Okay? So, non-binary actions done with strong motive. So, representations of empowerment and discrimination on non-binary identities. Again, so, etong mga non-binary identities ba na ito, sila ba ay empowered or sila ay discriminated? Okay? So, sila ba ay nade-discriminate just because they are not part of the binary categories, or are they accepted? Or are they just tolerated? Or are they actually empowered? Okay, so paano sila nire-represent, okay, ng popular culture? So, challenges the conventional views on gender. So, again, we all know that gender is being restricted to just like the male and female identities. But right now, we have a lot of identities that we need to consider or reconsider. So, yun nga, yung mga part ng ating queer umbrella. Okay? So, normalizes the uniqueness of non-binaries and not just a simple tolerance of in-betweens. Again, you are trying to normalize. You are normalizing the uniqueness of non-binaries, meaning they are people. They are actually living, breathing people, okay, that have their own feelings. They are entitled to their own feelings. They are entitled with their own decisions, okay? So, you are not just simply tolerating that they are people na walang mapaglagyan, okay? Because they have a place talaga, okay? So, dun sila sa queer na kabilang, okay? So, yun nga. So, they are not just in-betweens. They are actually people, okay, with their own identities. And then, lastly, tries to look into popular culture, literature, and other works in the lens of the queers. Or you are trying to look into popular culture in the eyes of the non-binaries or the queers. Okay? So, you are trying to look into their representations. Are they represented well? Okay? So, that is queer theory. So, yan, mga examples natin ng mga works na pwede natin gamitin yung queer theory. Ayan, so you have yun, In a Heartbeat, ayan, a short animation nag-trending worldwide. So you have that. You also have yung My Husband's Lover. You could also use the queer theory here. And then, of course, the classic, very subtle, si Toya, and then si Yukito, yan, sa Cardcaptor Sakura. So, makikita natin yan. Okay, so, when you are using queer theory to analyze these, the first things that you have to ask yourself while looking at these examples is, how are they being represented? So how are the queers being represented in the work? So are they oppressed? Are they discriminated? Same thing katulad ng feminism, are they the root of evil? Are they represented badly? Or parang what are the moral implications attached to their identity in the representation? Okay? Are they accepted? Are they just tolerated? What kind of treatment yung na-experience nila dun sa loob ng work na yon. Dun sa work na yon, how are they being represented? Okay? So, how are they treated in the work? Okay? So, ayun. So, ayan, yung mga usong-uso ngayon, yung mga Thai series, kaliwat kanan, of course, meron din tayo yung mga manhwa na meron tayo. So, anong klaseng representation ng queers yung pinapakita dito? Okay? So, anong klaseng treatment yung makukuha natin mula sa mga to? Paano natin tinatrato yung mga queers or non-binaries natin in these examples? Okay? So, ayan. So, we have also Call Me By Your Name. And then we have Brokeback Mountain. Okay? So, halimbawa, yun nga, habang pinapanood natin itong mga to or habang tinitignan natin itong mga to, paano natin sila tinitignan, paano natin sila tinatrato doon sa loob ng pelikula or paano sila tinatrato sa loob ng TV series na yon. So, ano yung representation sa kanila? Inaapi ba sila? Tanggap ba sila? Tinatakwil ba sila? Empowered ba sila? So, anong klaseng pagtanggap ang meron sa kanila? So, ano ba sila? Tawag nito, closeted ba sila? Or naka-out talaga sila? Anong klaseng treatment na meron sa kanila? Okay, so you have here, tambalan ni Rian tsaka ni Glyza. Okay, so ayan. Tapos meron din tayo, syempre, Cardcaptor Sakura. Meron din tayo si Tomoyo tsaka si Sakura. Ayan, although magpinsan sila, pero parang meron din kasi silang parang implication na medyo parang si Tomoyo ay may crush kay Sakura, something like that. Okay, so yun nga, you are looking at it in the lens of a queer. Okay, so yung mga implications, how are they being treated? So, ayan din, meron din tayong mga examples. Si Elsa as parang, we are not trying to assume, pero yun nga, si Elsa parang representing asexual, kasi wala siyang love interest, hindi naman siya nagpakita ng interest sa lalaki, hindi naman siya nagpakita ng interest sa babae din. Okay, so, parang asexual si Elsa, kasi nga, parang wala siyang interest with romantic relations or sexual relations with either of the sexes. Okay? So, yun nga, parang asexual yung analysis sa kanya. What else? Si Shang, si Captain Lee Shang ng Mulan. Yun naman, siya ay bisexual kasi nga nung si Mulan ay si Ping ay lalaki pa, yun nga, medyo attached na siya doon. Tapos nung naging babae, nagkagusto din siya. So, parang he swings both ways, ganyan. So, it's a common internal joke between the fandom of Mulan, the animated series. Okay, so what are the questions that you could ask yourself while analyzing using queer theory? So number one, what are the politics or ideological agenda specific gay, lesbian, or queer people, and how are those politics revealed in the work's thematic content or portrayals of the characters? Okay, so again, parang yung ideology ng mga queers na represented in the work. So, what are the poetics or literary devices or strategies of a specific lesbian, gay, queer, or queer works? Okay? So, paano pinalabas yung kanilang pagiging lesbian, gay, or queer using literary devices? Okay? So, say for example, pag gay ba, required na gumamit siya ng Becky language, required ba na maging Becky Mon siya? Or required ba na kailangan laging medyo maarte yung pagsasalita niya para masabi na gay yung representation? Or pag lesbian naman yung nire-represent dun sa text, kailangan ba medyo tigasin yung boses niya? Kailangan bang ganon? Or paanong language? Ano yung poetics na ginamit in order for their portrayal of a queer person para maging effective siya dun sa paningin ng popular culture? Okay? So how does the literary text illustrate the problematics of sexuality and sexual identity? That is the ways in which human sexuality does not fall neatly into the separate categories defined by the words homosexual and heterosexual. Okay, so paano pinapakita ng text or ng representation or rather ng popular culture, paano pinapakita ng popular culture yung human sexuality, its complexities, its intricacies, and every identity out there na hindi siya nagpo-fall lang sa dalawang categories which are homosexual and heterosexual. Kasi usually kapag naisip natin na queer, laging naisip natin bakla tomboy. Okay? So laging homosexual, laging heterosexual yun ang isip natin. Okay? Pero actually yun nga, how does popular culture, how does the text or the subject or the representation address the intricacies, the complexities of sexuality, that actually there are different identities out there na hindi lang you cannot label them with just homosexual and heterosexual. So halimbawa, yun nga, asexual, aromantic, gender fluid, yung mga yon, may sariling identity bawat isa sa mga yon na you cannot just label them homosexual, ganyan. So, how does the representation address the individuality of each sexuality and gender identities out there? Okay? So, does popular culture help in empowering queers and changing the audience's views on non-binary people? Okay, so how does popular culture help in empowering those non-binary people? Okay, and then to change the views, the prejudice versus the queers. Okay, so nakakatulong ba yung popular culture in order for people to accept queers or non-binary people? Does this parang help in making people understand that queers or non-binary people have their own identities, they also have their own feelings, they're entitled with their own decisions and feelings? So yun, nakakatulong ba siya sa mga tao para maunawaan kung ano ba talaga yung mga queers at ano ba talaga sila bilang tao? So are there portrayals that show non-binary characteristics? So, if so, are they oppressed, tolerated, or accepted? So, yun nga, halimbawa, yung isang film ay hindi naman talaga about queers. So, wala namang explicitly sinabi na bakla or tomboy or asexual or bisexual doon sa film. Pero, hindi lang sila nagfo-fall dun sa binary categories. Say, for example, yung lalaki, hindi siya yung typical na lalaki na mahilig sa blue, so mahilig siya sa pink, mahilig siyang mag-ballet, ganyan. So, ano yun, pwede nating gamitin din yung queer theory doon kasi merong portrayal na hindi stereotypically binary eh. Okay? So ano sila? So how are they treated in the representation? So are they oppressed? Are they tolerated? Or are they accepted for who they are? Okay? And lastly, are there any stereotyping present in the representation or work? So how are these addressed? Okay, so ayun nga, meron ba tayong makikita mga stereotyping na present? Halimbawa, minsan kasi may mga pelikula na OA, para lang masabi na bakla yung pinoportray nila, sobrang lambot naman nila, sobrang OA naman nila. Eh, as we all know, hindi naman lahat ng bakla ay maarte. Hindi naman lahat ng bakla ay nagdadamit ng pambabae. Okay, so ibig sabihin, the gays are not well represented in that film or in that series because they are stereotyping. Okay, so again, we can analyze popular culture or representations using these guide questions. Okay, if we plan to use queer theory. Okay, so we are going to end our discussion here. So we have discussed feminism and tawag nito, feminism and gender related approach, yun nga, feminism and queer theory. So we are going to stop here. So for the third video, I'm going to discuss about structural approach as well as yung kasama na, yung last na, which is yung postmodern approach. Okay, so thank you so much for listening in our second video.